In terms of service and also table setting, and we'll sort of do carry on. If you do want to depart, then just feel free to go as you feel free. As apologies for the recording, I can't stop them, they just keep on going. So my name would have been in the 19th century John Farrants, butler to the 9th Duke of Marlborough, and my role predominantly was to look after the male servants that worked within the palace itself. And I would have people like footmen who would serve predominantly at table, but also undertake a lot of cleaning tasks relating to all the tableware that we'll be using at those tables. So for instance, when we do a place setting, we don't use a cork mat, even one with a nice picture on. We have these, which are silver chargers. And because they're silver, they will tarnish, and so we might have around 100 of these. So one of my footmen might spend quite a few hours polishing each one, getting the sort of tarnish off the silver, and then getting them ready for use at table. Now, when we set a table, and we'll talk about that in a minute, we tend to try and arrange things in a way that's going to be attractive, but also precise. Precision is very important when setting a table, because it will look impressive by the conclusion of it. Now, a servant's day would be incredibly long. So, particularly the junior servants, how old are you again? 10? Possibly fractionally a bit young, but we would perhaps take sort of servants from 11, 12. So we'd have hall boys, boot boys, whose obviously job was to clean all the boots, lamp boys, so they would be the ones who would fill up all these brass lamps that used to sort of be throughout a Victorian sort of lounge and dining and living room area. All of these people, but as you rise up, you come into the category of footmen, and you might have a fifth footman, a fourth footman, a third footman, a second footman, a first footman, who would almost be, if you like, the deputy to the butler, and at the top of that tree would be the butler. The flip side of the housekeeper is they would look after all the scullery maids, all the housemaids, all the ladies' maids, and they were the most senior of the female servants. Similarly, in the chef's area, he would perhaps have a cook working for him. Sometimes in very large establishments, they might even have dessert chefs. So these were people who are highly skilled at doing things like ice sculptures or modelling using sort of jellies, etc., partially using those moulds. And then, of course, you'd have your head kitchen maid, the kitchen maid, and then some of the scullery maids. And of course, the scullery maids and the junior housemaids would be the ones who get all the grotty jobs. So you could expect, perhaps, as a sort of a scullery maid, you might be tasked to say, behead, pluck and gut 15 or 20 chickens, and that would be what you would do for the next hour. They would also, of course, spend a heck of a lot of their day actually with their hands in the washing bowl, in the scullery, doing all the cleaning of all this plate and tableware that would be utilised during the course of the day. If you had a house party such as this, which is a picture taken in 1896 with some 30 guests, this with a 7-course dinner would generate 1,000 pieces of tableware which would all have to be washed. And so these poor ladies would probably spend the bulk of their day either doing very unpleasant things like gutting chickens or gutting fish, preparing them ready for the chef, but also they would spend their day washing up. And they'd rise probably around 5:30 in the morning, and they'd probably go to bed between 9 and 12 o'clock, depending on circumstances. Because you're entertaining on this scale, this is when the household was working at maximum sort of pressure. Once the guests have gone, and you're just looking after the family, possibly some of that pressure would slacken off, but things were still done to an appropriate standard. So we're going to do this table setting exercise, and I can see we've got a number of potential footmen here to be trained. So we'll utilise you in the process. But if you start with your good self, would you like to do a little table then? Would you like to lay the table? Is that a no? No, no, good. Would you like to do it yourself? Yeah, come forward. So, if you change your mind, let me know. So what I want you to do to start off with, I want you to put the silver charger in the centre, so you can see a centre line down here. Imagine this was a cake, and if you were cut it 50-50, you want to make sure that if you have one half, somebody has the other, you want to make sure you've got the 50, not the 49 or the 50. So if you put that down, but also using your thumb, kind of rule of thumb here, to ensure that the edge of this will rest against your thumb.
I assume you refer to the great Monsieur Hasnan. What's he said now, Mrs. Williams?
I'm just walking through the kitchen, minding my own business, and he can't help but make cheeky comments.
You think that's central?
That's how he comes to pressure, Mrs. Williams.
Okay, let's have a look. So I stand over
Say,
it.
Mrs. Williams.
That's pretty good. I would say you're on about 46 to 54, so you end up with 46.
French for nutty.
The trick is to look over, and I use my thumb here, to look over the top, and that gives you your good central view. So when we put the plates down, we put them in reverse order that they're going to be used. So this would be for the main course, this smaller one would be for the fish dish, and we're going to start with soup. And we're having a small affair today, just a mere 3 courses. Okay? So what I want you to do now is put this plate down centrally to that silver charger. On that top. So, very carefully done, no danger of breakages here. And the really good thing that you've done here is you've ensured the picture, because I deliberately gave it to you with this picture askew, so that the person sitting here is looking straight onto the picture. Now, this next one is a little trickier again, because what I want you to do is place this down, but so that when this sits in the middle, that
It's to start at 6
edge round the edge is equidistant, it's the same distance from the edge of this to there. We don't want it over there or over there, we want it smack bang in the middle. See how we go. We should have a drum roll at this point.
The Royals will be in their military finery, and the Blue Hungarian band have come up from London to play.
Again, you've managed to keep it straight, so if you move to one side, because this is what the butler would do. The butler checks that the footmen are doing it appropriately and would give them advice if they haven't. I think that's pretty good. That one's pretty good, pretty spot on. It must be really picky, I might nudge it across a little bit, but there you go. So, would you like to take over? No? Can't get the staff these days. Do you want to come back? Very good. Okay, so we're going to just move this over a little bit, because what we do want is that plate to be around. Now, when we line up all our knives and our forks, we want the bottoms of them to rest on the ruler, so that as you look across, you will see them all line up. It's a little bit bent, this one, but like that. Now the other thing is, we want the blade of this knife, if we put this down, this is 1, 2, 3 centimetres, so we want the blade of the knife to rest in that position. You can see it, so as you look down, you can more or less, you can hardly see a gap between the root there and the knife. So you have to go. So try and line it up on that blade.
We have no nails.
Okay, now do your measurement the other way. Very good. I think this man has the making of a jolly good footman. Great attention to detail. That's pretty going. Just a fraction that way, but right. Now, if we take the ruler and place it here, tell me a second. So, can you see the centre point of the knife? So what we do is we line up the ruler here. Now we want the centre point of this knife. This is a tricky little biter because it doesn't sit flat, it floats in the air. We want the centre point to basically 3 centimetres, 1, 2, 3 on that line, and then make sure that line's up there. Can you do that?
Good. So now I want you to spend 10 minutes a day learning each room now. So you can know that right.
Thank you, Mr. Camp. I will do just that.
Okay, very good. And again, by looking down, it is tricky with the fish knife because it does float in midair and is not the easiest to do. And then finally your soup spoon, another 3 centimetres in the centre of the fish knife. Very good. Okay, try not to obviously waggle the dreaded fish knife, and probably just making sure there's a little bit of separation between the two as you look down. So the fish knife is a very dodgy beast. But partly the reason it's a dodgy beast, ladies and gentlemen, it's an American invention from the 1920s. And when it first came to the UK, Queen Mary, who was married to George V, saw one of her servants using one of these and decided if the servant was going to use it, she would not. And so instead, she would have a fork to take the place of the fish knife, which sounds a bit bizarre because essentially what you were doing was holding the fish down with one and paring the fish off the bone carefully with the other. And of course you think to yourself, wouldn't a fish knife have been so much more sensible? There's no point of being a queen if you can't make daft rules. And of course, once the queen's decided that she's not using a fish knife, well, what's a duke to do? They follow suit. Bam! You know, they just... So these things pretty much got outlawed, although when I was growing up about your age, if my mum served fish, she always used a fish knife. So that was the thing they did. Similarly, soup spoons. Another American invention from the 1920s, and the Duke of Marlborough decided he wasn't going to use a soup spoon, he'd use a dessert spoon instead of a soup spoon, so that would be later. And the tradition at Blenheim is, even to this day, that if they're serving soup, they will have a dessert spoon and a fork in place of the fish knife. And it's just one of those bizarre things that people decide to do. But we'll put our spoon back. Now the dessert spoon, the dessert spoon needs to sit 3 centimetres from the edge with the handle facing that way. Does anybody know why the handle faces that way as opposed to this way?
We eat with that.
It's because it's expected that you'll use your right hand. And this goes back to an era when to use your left hand was considered absolutely a no-no. And interesting enough, the Latin word for left is sinister. Yeah, but there we go. So, it's even to this day, you set it for a right-handed person, because going back into the 19th and early 20th centuries, my father-in-law was left-handed, and at school, if he was caught writing with his left hand, the teacher would take one of these and crack him across the knuckles to prevent him from doing it. And so he learned to use right-handed. Now, to speed things up, I've just put these in approximately the right position. The buckler would always come behind the footman to make sure the measurements have been followed. The plate might sit northwest, so if that's north, that's west, northwest is halfway, and we want this placed on the edge of the room, a bit like you did the other one. Do that for me? Yeah, this is good. Don't worry about the fish nose, it's almost perfect. And again, obviously think of the picture, so you just want to rotate perfect like that, and then this knife sits halfway across the plate like that.
I just don't believe the gall of that man. He is so cheeky.
I assume you refer to the great
Now we'll pop the soup roll on. And the final thing, which is table setting, is the arrangement of the glasses.
That's
So you would have this smaller glass would be for white wine, the larger one would be for red wine. Because we've got a fish dish, we're having some sherry in the small glass. The glass allegedly you're going to drink the most of is water, allegedly, and at the back is port, for your port at the end of the meal. So that would be how you lay things out. Does anybody know what one of these is? No? It's a place setting. Can you see there's a little gap here, and a card would be inserted so that the person knew exactly where they were going to sit. Because one of the jobs of the butler would be to consult Brett's peerage to check who should sit where at the table according to their rank. And it was considered very embarrassing if you sat somewhere that you had to be moved because you were of a lower rank than the person who should have been sat there. So to avoid embarrassment, the butler would check each person's position according to this Brett's peerage, would place a place card here so you would know exactly where you should sit and you wouldn't embarrass yourself by sitting in the wrong place. So when you've done this setting, can you imagine how well it would look? And I would say to you, well done, you've done a great job. I want you to do this another 39 times. Because that would be sort of the length to which you'd have to go to when you were hosting a party such as this. And when President Trump comes on state visit, Buckingham Palace, preparing for the state banquet, could spend 2 to 3 days laying the table. Because they will do this, but they'll do this to the nth degree, almost using a micrometer. Now notice, I'm wearing gloves. Does anybody know why I wear gloves? Oh, very good. Not spread germs. Well, that is a bonus. Yes, that is true. We mentioned about the silver. The grease on your hands will tarnish the silver and leave fingerprints behind. So another good reason. But the real reason a servant would wear gloves, beyond those two things, is because it would be unthinkable that my flesh should touch the tableware of those who are socially superior to me. Okay? It was done to create that separation physically between the servant and their employers. And so, an example of this, I don't think I've got my card on this.
That's probably for the lessons to come.
One of the events during the... If you want to pop back, that's fine. Thank you. I think a round of applause to this young man. Very good. Very good indeed. And if you'd like to leave me his references, we'll consider taking him on. So if you were calling on somebody, you would ring the doorbell, but you wouldn't expect to see the Duke or the Duchess on that very first occasion. But what you might do, if I can give you this, is the butler would present the silver salver and will take the card to the Duchess. You all know the Duchess. Take the card. Okay. And so I've presented the card to the Duchess from the person giving it to me, and at no time has my flesh soiled that card, even wearing gloves. It's that level of separation which marks out the servant from those with whom they serve. And of course it is an incredibly upstairs, downstairs, to use that phrase, system of operation. Now one final thing to leave you to ponder on. How do you, a question for you, get a bowl of soup to the Duchess for her lunch? Well, it works something like this. The Duchess will say to her lady's maid, I would like a bowl of soup for my lunch. The lady's maid will then speak to the butler and inform me that the lady, in say half an hour's time, would like a bowl of soup for her lunch. I will walk all the way down the 67 steps of the servants' staircase and tell the chef next door that the lady would like a bowl of soup for her lunch. the chef will instruct the scullery maid to go and get a tin of soup from the pantry. The scullery maid will give it to the kitchen maid, who will then open it. And the kitchen maid will then give it back to the chef, who will then start to cook it. Now, meanwhile, the cooking is going on. A footman will approach the butler and ask for the silver key. I will give him the key, and the footman will then go off and get a silver tray from the silver store, present me the key back, and then take the tray all the way back downstairs to the chef. The kitchen maid will lay it ready for the Duchess to drink her soup, and eventually the soup will be put into the soup bowl, a little dome put on the top to keep it warm. The footman will then pick it up, walk up the 67 steps to the Duchess's room, give it to the head housemaid, who will then knock on the door, will give the tray to the lady's maid, who will then put the soup down for the Duchess to drink. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is how it should be done. So, I hope you've enjoyed our little demonstration about how to lay a table in the Victorian era, and I do hope you have a good rest of the day. And thank you, young man, for your services.
Thank you.